Yes, welcome to Citizens Forum on Sapiencia's channel. I'm Jude Jomanekeji, and it's so nice to be here with you today. I really had some back and forth with myself on the theme for today's edition. I was struggling because I was looking at it. Within the week, one very interesting thing that happened was ECOWAS turned 50. Now, the official theme for ECOWAS 50th anniversary is Stronger Together for a Brighter Future. And so I was thinking, do we talk about ECOWAS at 50? Are we stronger together and all? But I settled on something I think is better. And that is ECOWAS still relevant at 50? Welcome to Citizens Forum today, and that's what we'll be talking about. Some things also have happened recently that makes it so important for us to have this conversation around ECOWAS at 50. And that is on May 28th, when ECOWAS really marked 50. I found it hard to locate an intelligent conversation around ECOWAS at 50. And so most of the conversation and articles you can find to read mostly centered around the sentiment around what is happening today with the ECOWAS community. And some people also wrote from their sentiments around the Nigerian political landscape and who they see as the leader of ECOWAS and all of that. Realizing that it was Gaddafi all along who held back hell from being unleashed to the entire Sahel and today West Africa, of which Nigeria is battling with its own fair share of those devils we call now bandits and terrorists. Muammar Gaddafi had agreed to cede power. He had agreed to resign. Not only had he confided with his colleagues, African leaders, that he was going to do this to ensure that the West did not destroy Libya, his country. But Western diplomats have now written and have now been talking that they had flown to Libya, met with Muammar Gaddafi, and he agreed with them in writing that he was going to leave power. But then America, then led by President Barack Obama, we remember Hillary Clinton and all her comments around Libya and Muammar Gaddafi. They insisted he was going to be taken out. In a last move to save not just Muammar Gaddafi, but to save Libya, save the region, and indeed the African continent, African leaders told Western powers to hold on, that they were going to move to Libya and talk to their colleagues, arrest the situation. Of course, he needed to be offered an asylum. He's the president, for crying out loud. What was the response of Western powers? They told African leaders that if they get into Libyan airspace, they wouldn't guarantee their safety. And so, these are African leaders on their soil, on African soil, being told by Western powers that they couldn't guarantee the safety of any African leader who flew into Liberia, into Libya. The rest is history. The rest is history. Over a decade later, Libya is in tatters. Western powers had no interest whatsoever to protect the people of Libya. That wasn't the mission. The Western powers had no interest whatsoever about everybody knew what the consequence of a destabilized Libya will be on Africa. But Western powers cared nothing. The rest, as they say, is history. But then, can we balance that with what happened in 2017? 2017, when Yahya Jammeh, the former president of Gambia, Yahya Jammeh refused to cede power to Adama Barrow. The elections had been held sometime in December 2016. I hope I get that right. Sometimes in December 2016. The opposition won that election. As sitting president of the Gambia, he refused that results, declared a state of emergency, and that country was sliding into chaos. It took ECOWAS to restore sanity, and they did it so beautifully. Kudos to then President of Nigeria too, who was one of those who led that move, former President Muhammadu Buhari. They gave him a soft landing. Granted, of course, he came to Nigeria. We recall then he came to Nigeria, agreed to cede power, and he was later granted asylum in another country. Now, when we look at these stories, we then begin by talking about the essence of a bloc coming together. The perfect example we'll look for is, or are, the former 13 colonies of Britain, today called America. The Great Britain it was that not only colonized Nigeria, but also America. When these 13 colonies got to realize, and let's not forget, they were 13 different colonies. They had their distinct government, they had their elected parliament, and they had lots of differences. When you talk about people being different and having their differences, these 13 colonies had their different. But then between 1774, 1775, they started meeting. I mean, these were leaders who realized, and people who realized, we have common challenges. And being separate entities, we can't win this common enemy. We can't achieve our common prosperity. We can provide the things we all need for our people. And so they started this series of meetings and conferences, 1774, 1775, 1776. All of these that led to or culminated to the American, what we now know as the American Revolution. What did they know then in the 1770s? It was, we are better together. They won their independence, and today we call them the United States of America. That idea of a United States was also thrown in Africa. We recall, what's his name? Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana. One of those who led that move and said, Africa, we will achieve nothing. If we gain what we now call independence, will be absolutely nothing if we do not merge together as a United States of Africa, have our own currency, have our own bank, have our own army, and be one united people. That if this does not happen, the next phase Africa was going to go into after independence, because that was the independence era, the 1957, 1958, 1960, that was the era of the independence. The independence, tsunami was blowing across Africa. And so he cautioned African leaders and Africans that by all means we should unite. It was a popular philosophy that was spread even by black Americans. We remember the Marcus Garveys of this world, the W.J. Du Bois of this world. You listen to the music that was coming out of Africa, that era, Africa Unite by Bob Marley. It was a philosophy that was being sold, that if Africa was to make do, of its independence and achieve anything, it shouldn't allow itself to be recolonized, which is what we are having now, neocolonialism, that it was going to be worse than colonialism. Did Africa listen? But then ECOWAS at 50, so we dwell on ECOWAS. Before May 1975, there had been attempts, there had been moves to get the West African states together. But then it was in May 1975, May 28th, to be very specific, that we saw the 15 heads of state of 15 African countries, West African countries, come together and sign that treaty that formed the Economic Community of West African States. Now, the countries that were part of that treaty were Benin, Burkina Faso, then known as Upper Volta, Cote d'Ivoire, Gambia, Ghana, Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Mali, Mauritania, Niger, Nigeria, Senegal, Sierra Leone, Togo, and then those were the 15. In 1977, you recall 1977, also a special year in Africa, because that was the year of Festac 77, Festac 77. That was the year that Cape Verde joined the ECOWAS state, and so we became 16. Was that the best thing to happen to the West African states at that time? 1975. Was this the best thing for African leaders to do? Without a shadow of a doubt, that was an excellent idea. That was the best thing that happened, to these countries at that time. That was the best thing that happened for so many reasons. If we look at the most minute reason, then we will see that our borders were actually drawn by people who had no regard to our ethnicity, to whoever we are as a people. And so those lines were artificial. And so, for instance, the Yoruba people have their kith and kin in Benin, in Togo. So it was a good move. The Hausas, for instance, you have the Hausas in Niger, you have the Hausas in Mali, I think you have the Hausas in Ghana, you have the Fulani too. We share cultural ties with some of these countries. And it is not just a Nigerian story. I'm saying when you look across the 16 countries now I mentioned who are were part of ECOWAS, because some of them have left, we'll come to that. Then you see, you have tribes, brothers and sisters across different borders. But then what more? For trade, for security, for prosperity, free movement of people within the borders, there needed to be some kind of a groundwork agreement that ensures that all of these things could happen. And so across the world, you see things like that happening. But then 50 years later, what has ECOWAS achieved? I will allow the economists to talk about all they will talk about, but many of us still remember, especially the face of ECOWAS as a success has been ECOMOG. And so that standing army, not standing army like NATO can talk about, but that regional army that gets mobilized when we have need to help out a country that is descending into chaos. And so in 1990, the ECOMOG forces in Liberia, in 1997 in Sierra Leone, 1999 in Guinea-Bissau, 2003 in Cote d'Ivoire, 2003 in Liberia, 2013 in Mali, and 2017 in Gambia. I mean, one cannot but praise the role of ECOWAS in these instances. I mean, you still listen to the citizens of this country. You still listen to the local population in areas where ECOMOG forces went, and you feel proud to be an African. because the difference between the ECOMOG forces being in their community, coming right on time, was the difference between life and death. They saved lives. I recall growing up, that was called peacekeeping. It wasn't even called an intervention exercise. It was called peacekeeping. So it was ECOMOG peacekeeping. One should feel proud as an African that we had African boots on ground on African soil. Do we have that today? Has ECOWAS been alive to its responsibility across the West African states in 2025? Your guess will be as good as mine when we throw open the phone lines. Asking the question, is ECOWAS still relevant at 50? Because we just celebrated ECOWAS at 50, is what we can't avoid to talk about. You see, in the year 2000, Mauritania decided to opt out of ECOWAS. That came as a big blow and as a big shock. But they agreed that they will still remain as an observer nation, but not an active member of the ECOWAS. That was the opening salvo. But then recent history that is we are all so familiar with is the alliance of the Sahelian states and how the ECOWAS leadership handled that uprising in these three states. And so slowly but surely we saw in the year 2020 really flagged off a series of coups across West Africa. I think from 2020 till date, we should be talking about maybe 10, maybe 11, thereabout. So it was a floodgate that was opened. But then the aftermath of it is we saw regime changes in Mali, in Niger, in Burkina Faso. Now, these three countries, in these three countries, we saw the guys in uniform, the military, take over power from their predecessors. And, let the diplomats talk about all of that. These were not properly handled, and we have seen these three countries turn their backs on ECOWAS. To talk about the relevance of ECOWAS in 2025 is to talk about the economy, to talk about security. And so, for years, we have seen ECOWAS spread that dream of having its own currency called the ECO. It's been a conversation that has been ongoing, and timelines had been set. And so, 2003, they did not meet that, it failed. That was kicked down the road to 2005. 2005, they also did not get this working. And so they kicked it down the road to 2014. 2014, they could not also get that. And so they kicked that down the road to 2020. This is a very familiar African and indeed also Nigerian story. And so 2020, they did not get that. They also met once again and also kicked the can down the road to 2027. And so while ECOWAS as a group, as a regional body, 15 countries plus one observer nation, with all of the resources available to it, have been kicking this can down the road. We were really shocked to see the AES, the Alliance of Sahel States, Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, without much fanfare, without the usual inauguration of committees, without the usual back and forth and all of that, establish a confederal bank for investment and development. I mean, that in itself is something I personally never thought would happen in this lifetime. And so they have set up a confederal bank. The importance and the significance of this is legendary to the black man, to the African. And so they set this up with an initial deposit of 500 billion CFAs. What is the biggest impact for me? I mean, the Economist will enlighten us more on the far-reaching consequence of this and implication of this. I was going to have somebody, but we'll definitely have that conversation with him someday. Is the IMF, World Bank, which have always dictated the pace of development in Africa, decided which project is worth funding and which project is not worth funding? The IMF and the World Bank, who have always been the ones to decide which contractors from their own countries handle which project which they fund. The IMF, the World Bank Group, who have always decided what the interest to the loans to African countries will be, by this singular move, have been given no seats. Because we talk about the front seat, we talk about giving the back seat, but then have been given no seats, have been given no power whatsoever for consultation, for whatsoever, in this agreement, in this arrangement. And so these three countries would not need anybody in France, in London, in Washington, deciding what their developmental priorities will be. So the AES have set this up in our lifetime, while the ECOWAS had been dragging its foot for all along. Security is also something the ECOWAS needs to wake up to. Because like I said, with the destabilization of Libya, came hell to the Sahel. And from the Sahel, hell has been let loose across West Africa. So in 2025, how will ECOWAS reposition itself, reposition its army, reposition its intelligence gathering, its financing, its ready force, its collaboration, its military collaboration to deal with the new threat? In 2025, with technological advancement across the world, how is ECOWAS getting ready? What steps have ECOWAS been taking to ensure that some of these technologies are localized, are gotten, children, youths within the ECOWAS region are equipped with the tools to take advantage of the technological revolution going on across the world? These and other questions we'll be really asking ourselves today and try to make sense of. Of course, the numbers to call to be a part of the program today to talk about, is ECOWAS still relevant at 50? The numbers to call to take part in this conversation are 081-574-66270. And that is 081-574-66270. And 080-631-30020. 080-631-30020. These are the numbers to call to take part in the program today. Hello. Oh, sorry, we lost that call. Still 081-574-66270 and 080-631-30020. We are talking about ECOWAS at 50. Is ECOWAS still relevant at 50? Let's have this conversation. ECOWAS has been toying with having its own bank and its own currency. Why is this seeming an illusion? Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, you're close to your radio set.
I'm from the radio now.
All right, go ahead.
Yes, this is Mr. Daniel calling from Abuja.
All right, welcome, Mr. Daniel.
Hello?
You're welcome, Mr. Daniel.
Okay. The question is ECOWAS still relevant at 50?
Yes.
My brother, ECOWAS is not relevant. They are not relevant. They are not helping Africa in any way. ECOWAS is the pupils of the West. So whatever they do is what the West ordered them to do. Even the head of ECOWAS in Nigeria, which is Tinubu, he pays allegiance to the West. Whatever he do is the footstep is directed by the West. So my brother, ECOWAS has no, in fact, they have no value in Africa anymore.
Now let me ask you let me ask you this question. Now, do you think ECOWAS, or by whatever name we call it, we need a regional group that can help us build leverage on the table across the world? Do you think as West Africans, as Africans, we need a body, and what we should do is to reform and not kill what we have?
Yes, we need another body, not ECOWAS. We need another body that will engineer the total freedom of Africa.
Do you think ECOWAS
is doing in Burkina Faso, bringing the Sahel countries together to form it?
All right.
So that is exactly what we need.
All right. Thank you for calling into the program. But I did notice something when you were talking, and that's to tell everyone, when you call into the program, please make sure you either switch off your radio set, you mute your radio set, something like that, so we can have a conversation without, the interference that comes from your device. All right, still Citizens Forum. Now, the question I really meant to ask him is, ECOWAS, the African Union, for instance, and ECOWAS, because we are talking about ECOWAS, do we need to reform it, or you think it has lost its relevance completely? Hello?
Hello?
Yes, welcome, sir.
Good morning.
Yes.
I am calling. My name is Samson. I'm calling from Benin.
You're welcome, Mr. Samson.
Yeah, God bless you. Yeah, concerning what you're discussing about the ECOWAS.
Yes.
In fact, ECOWAS is irrelevant. Now, the big brother, the so-called big brother, Nigeria, is not even showing any example in leadership. Before you will go and say you want to bring, like you explained, it was called a peacekeeping force. They did the so-called peacekeeping force in Liberia, in Sierra Leone, and other places. But the big brother, there is no leadership. And you see, when you have another big brother that is controlling you, telling you what to do, you will not be able to function well. Are you with me?
We are with you.
Yeah. So you will not be able to function well. So when you have like the Western community, the UN, where you go and beg for money, they should borrow you money. They will give you condition of what to do. And now all the issue, all the, what do you call it, terrorism and what is happening, insurgency happening in Africa is orchestrated by the Western country. That is the truth. Because we are seeing pictures of helicopter with white men bringing arms to these people inside the bush. And again, what are they doing? They are even taking our resources. Look at what happened in Libya. These people went there and caused commotion there and destroyed the country and run away. Obama and when this woman was the Secretary of State, what is her name again? Hillary Clinton. You understand? They killed the man and cause problem over there. Now there's confusion there. They don't want peace. Anywhere you see that peace want to come in Africa, the white man is always there to destroy it. That's the truth. And you see, what I see in Africa is that like what these people have done now, the Burkina Faso, the Malian, the Nigerian, Niger, who have just left the what do you call it, this ECOWAS so-called something. Yes. Because if we say we have ECOWAS, or if we say you have AU, and the people that is in charge is even still the white men, we don't have anything. So we have to be the people who will say, enough all this imperialism, enough all this neocolonialism, we don't want them anymore. We want to really fight for ourselves and get our things done by ourselves. So whenever you see insurgency happen, even this Boko Haram, the white men will not just say they are not involved in it, they're completely involved in it. Who is bringing this AK-47 for these people, for crying out loud?
Now, if what you're saying is true, and what you're saying is true, I mean, when you're talking about foreign involvement and foreign sponsorship of terrorism in Africa, it's well documented, it is true, no questions about it. But then don't you think this is more the reason why we need to come together as not only a regional bloc, being West Africa, but then an African bloc? Don't you think this is the more reason why, both economically, security and all of that, that we must encourage this ECOWAS, by whatever name? I don't care what name we call it.
Okay, can I say this?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Each country, each nation need to come and separate themselves first. I'm not saying separate themselves from it. Just have, like, can I say, like in Nigeria as a whole, we need a revolution. If there's no revolution in Nigeria, things will not work out well. Do you understand?
I hear you.
Check if you know these clones, they just remove history. That people will not even read history to understand. Each nation in the world passed through revolution. Let us get it right. If this man in what do you call it, Burkina Faso man did not do this, what is called revolutionary, you know that Thomas Sankara came at that time, they killed him. Blaise Compaoré, the father of Thomas Sankara, was the one that trained Blaise Compaoré and trained him in the Sun Army. He took him as his son, but it was Blaise Compaoré they used to kill Thomas Sankara. The white man that came and did so. So if we really want to do something, like in Nigeria, revolution should take place, and all these people who are puppet to the white will be removed. Tinubu, for crying out loud, is working for the white people. He's not working for the interests of the nation.
Well,
he's working for the white people.
That's your conclusion. But then
my conclusion?
Yeah, that's your conclusion. But then we hear you loud and clear.
Yes.
You know, we should begin to have, I completely agree with you about history in our curriculum. And you know, people can call it history. I conclude it to be our curriculum. We have a curriculum that is so un-African that will not lead us to any development.
But when you see anybody who is rising and is for the people, he don't even need even escorts. All these people you see that they are voting security whatsoever, because the people themselves, they are not interested in the people. They are just interested for themselves. If not, the governor of Anambra doesn't need a need the truth. A governor doesn't need that because there'll be security. He's doing well. If he do well, doesn't even need to campaign next time. Just do things right, and everybody will just say, okay, we need him more. But you see, in all these things, when you come out and criticize somebody like him, we will not arise against you. But that is a good governance. In those days, journalism is working. When the journalists speak, the governor will check what the journalist says, is it true, and they will put it right. Journalism and this thing, media people work with the governor. But now, it is just politicized. If you speak, they will come after you, which is very bad. You understand? So what we need in Nigeria and every other part of Africa to be free from this white imperialists is revolution. Come out from them, because what are we going, why are we going to Chatham whatsoever? Why are they going to London, Chatham House in London to go and do what? Why? That means we are still under, what do you call it? Independence or dependence. Yeah. We're still under them.
Many ways to look at it.
That's why whenever they want to do anything, Nigeria will go to Chatham. Why will they go to Chatham House to go and discuss what? If we are not still under them, if we are an independent nation, why will we go to Chatham House?
But I personally don't know why everybody picks on Chatham House and forgets to pick on what should be picked upon. I have no problem if my leader goes to Chatham House. I mean, whatever forum it is globally for conversation, the Chinese come here. And the fact that the Chinese come here...
come and discuss about
no, but then let's talk about this. And I'm very serious.
Excuse me, your Chinese come to your country to come and discuss about their politics your country?
No, you've talked, and I'll say this. I have no business. I don't think there's anything wrong in global leaders going around to forums where there is conversation. I want Nigerians to begin to talk about the Commonwealth. We are a member of the Commonwealth. What is the meaning of the Commonwealth? These are the kind of conversations we should begin to have. I mean, wherever there is going to be a policy dialogue, we can go there and have a conversation. But then before we go there to have a conversation, it should be on our terms. For instance, I feel pained that I'm listening to people talk about 2027, opposition and the ruling party, and nobody is talking about what is happening with the alliance of the Sahel states. We want people to be bold enough to say, hey, wait a minute, if I get into power, this is how I'm going to handle these countries. This is what I think should happen to these countries. This is the kind of cooperations I'm going to have with Togo, with Ghana, with... We are having political conversation in Nigeria, and we are not talking about that. We are having political conversation in Nigeria, and I have not heard anybody, whether in the opposition, I didn't even hear that conversation in 2023. None of the candidates in 2023 said exactly what their relationship was going to be with the Commonwealth of Nations, which in itself is an insult. I mean, that Nigeria in 2025 is still a member of the Commonwealth, a nation that claims to be independent. I think this is where we should be pouring our anger. And I think we should be clearly telling our leaders and those who are campaigning for our votes, those who are, what is it called now? Those who are trying to form a coalition. We should be picking these guys for them to tell us exactly how Pan-African their policy outlook is going to be. But nobody is doing that. Sometimes I think, even though with the best of intention, we pick on the wrong things. This is what I think, though. But then, still Citizens Forum 081-574-66270 and 080-631-30020. We are talking about ECOWAS at 50. Is ECOWAS still relevant at 50? That's the conversation today. Is ECOWAS still relevant at 50? Do we, as West Africa and as Africans, do we need these regional and continental bodies for anything? Can they be reformed as they are? Hello. Hello. Oh, sorry, we lost that call. Can they be reformed as they are today, or do we need to wither away with what we have? And if we wither away what we have, do we replace it with something else, or do we just go to your tent, O Israel? And to your tent, O Israel, is that workable in today's world? Is that workable in today's world? Let's also look at some of the agenda. Because, I mean, we said in 1975, May 28, 1975, these regional leaders came together, 15 of them, and later became 17 in 1977, to form what we now call ECOWAS, right? And so one of the things is, of course, trade. Trade. It was supposed to make it easier for us to trade within ourselves. Is that the case today? Hello?
Hello, good morning.
Yeah, welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you very much. My name is Peter.
Right.
Okay. I think I would want to say, first of all, that I love the fact that your analysis is straight to the point, and it kind of covers the interest when we're talking about, geopolitics. So whenever we're talking about ECOWAS, we're talking about geopolitics.
Yeah.
But I also want to make reference to the fact, the things that we said about the 13 colonies of America and how America came to be.
Okay.
The problem we have with ECOWAS is the fact that independent nations within ECOWAS do not feel within themselves the idea of independence. There is no stable politics within the independent nations of ECOWAS, and it's one of the problems why ECOWAS, as a regional government, is not stable. And people seem to do not get the idea of this. When let us, go back to the reference you made about the 13 colonies of America. America did not just, erupt from anywhere and become America as it is.
Yeah.
The independent people within that particular geographic location came together and said no to the British regime.
Yeah.
Then they formed and fought off the British Army and the Crown, and then became America. Then also, they had their own revolution, the Civil War. And it was after the Civil War that those alliances were made, and then it became the 50 United States of America. But here in Africa, especially in West Africa, the democracy is unstable. You cannot have an election and then you say that election is free and fair. And if you independently, the nations independently cannot have a free and fair elections, how do you imagine the region within those independent states to be stable? Democracy is not working. Our form of democracy is not working, and that is the crack that is holding the ECOWAS as it is. And if you look at it, how those military regimes, military juntas, those recent ones, to come together and form what they have. It is something that even, I'm sorry to say, independent leaders within the West African nations can't even imagine, because none of them have geopolitics in mind. The only thing that they're interested in is for them to fight for the money and just the local politics within. Nobody cares about geopolitics as it is. Africa cannot be great as an Africa if the independent nations and the leaders and the politicians think of the nation first before themselves. I think that is my contribution to this.
I find your contribution so powerful. I have nothing to ask you. I think I agree with you. But then I'm just going to ask you this, to help all of us and pick your brain. Now, if you were to suggest, all right, because that's where we are right now. We clearly have leaders who have, like you said, even people in the heads of affairs, they have no idea whatsoever of geopolitics. But if we were to advise, how do we put our good foot forward and build a West Africa, whatever name we call it, it might not be ECOWAS, and an African Union that is really worth its name, that blacks all over the world can be proud of. What would you suggest we start doing differently?
I do not necessarily think that there is anything wrong with the name ECOWAS. It is an economic state of West African nations.
Yeah.
There's no problem. The problem is the structure, the mindset. It does nothing. Just like we have issues with the name called Nigeria, people are saying, "Oh, let's break away, let's break away." But actually, the problem isn't with the name, because even if you break away with Nigeria, you'll still be relating with the independent peoples within the state.
Yeah.
So the problem with ECOWAS is not about the name. Even if you form a new group or anything, the problem still exists. You have to go to the root of the problem. And the problem is the democracy, the independent people who form that particular group.
Yeah.
That is where the problem is. Look at the United States, for example.
Yeah.
Look at other groups within Africa. It is not like this, even though it is bad, but it's not worse. ECOWAS is worse. So I think the problem is that we have to, as independent people, look back at what we think of democracy in Africa, West Africa specifically, and then revolutionize it. And this is not going to come with the stock of politicians we have with today. It has to come with our independent people, those of us who are eligible to vote, those of us who have the intention to make this country and Africa work. That is where it should start. Because if we elected, worthy leaders who have intentions of the people at heart, then when they go to the national stage, international stage, they will also bear our emotions with them, not just theirs.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay. Still Citizens Forum. I find this contribution, just like others too, quite on point. Hello. Oh, sorry. All right. Still Citizens Forum on Sapiencia's channel, and I'm Jude Joman, AKG. Just to add a little thing, because I completely agree with the last caller, is to say, we must have the courage and we must rise up to our responsibility. All of us who have some little sense left in us, across Africa, to begin to demand of our leaders that our curriculum be overhauled. It's really frustrating to have a conversation or to have conversation with people who should know better about geopolitics, sound somehow sometimes. We need to start letting the younger generation know that there is a continent. There is a continent that exists, and there are also powers who have long before we were born. I mean, people like me, we are born. Far long before we were born, decided what role Africa will play, and decided for far long before many of us we are born. Maybe anyone even listening to this program, before any of us who is listening to this program was born, Western powers had decided exactly what pigeonhole Africa will be. And we cannot develop outside of that pigeonhole that we have been put, except we rise up, begin to do the right things. And like the last caller said, this must, of course, begin with individual states. Nigeria is one of those individual states. And I'll end by talking about somebody who mentors a lot of us. Interestingly, technology has made it possible that you can have mentors outside your reach who don't even know you. And so Professor Lumumba keeps telling us that the day Nigeria wakes up, Africa will never be the same. That is a powerful thing to say. That is the powerful thing to think. And so every Nigerian, and by extension, everybody who aspires to lead Nigeria, must start thinking beyond Nigeria. Yes, we must think about Nigeria. That is where we begin. But we have a continent whose fortune we rise and fall with. Hello?
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, I still call the person that called from Benin.
All right. 1 minute, sir, because I'm totally out of time.
Okay. You see, like I was saying.
Yes, sir.
See, I was driving from Togo to Ivory Coast. You understand?
All right.
Coming into Ghana, there's a very place where immediately you arrive there, you must enter into a place where they will scrutinize you,
all right,
check all the papers, everything. So the man took my paper, and I know the journey is a distance one, and he was delaying me. I called the officer. I said, "Can I talk to you?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Wait, is there anything wrong for me as a West African man driving across West African coast without being disturbed by people like you?" The man turned and looked at me. I said, yeah, I'm in Nigeria. Didn't you see my passport and my driver license, international driver license? I said, it is wrong. You have President John Coups at that time with Gaddafi. They were talking about the global United States of Africa.
Yes.
You understand?
Yes.
And I said, we have not gotten it right in our midst. Charity begins at home. Like I told you, if Burkina Faso didn't do this, we wouldn't know. Burkina Faso started it, so each individual state, like I said, has to start with us. Charity begins at home. If you are talking about this, what do you call them? What do you call it again? This English-speaking country gathering together. What is the name again?
U.S.
What the name again?
That did what?
English-speaking country.
That did what exactly?
The global name you call, like you have ECOWAS and this thing. There's this English-speaking country that gather. They have a name. They call it. They have UN and what?
Well, I talked about the USA, and I think that's the only country I've talked about.
No, sir. We talk about. What is the name again? Not ECOWAS, not this thing, but
the IMF.
The one that Nigeria is a member state that we are talking about just now.
Commonwealth,
yes. So for us to talk about Commonwealth or this thing, let us get it right first. It is when we get it right, we'll be able to get it right over there. That is the truth. So that's where it starts.
I agree with you, sir.
Okay, God bless you.
All right, God bless you too. Really blessed with some very intelligent callers today. And I think I won't overstress it in signing out. I've been told by my producers that I need to run out of the studios. But it's for us to begin this conversation about West Africa and indeed Africa. The whole intention of this program is for us to widen our ideas and know that, hey, there is a continent for us. And we rise and fall together. But I agree with every caller who said that must, of course, begin within. And in the words of Professor Lumumba, is for us to know that the day we, as Nigerians, citizens, and Nigeria as a nation state gets it right, Africa will never be the same again. And that is something we should bequeath to our children. Jude Joman Ekeji, I say thank you for being here with me. I'll see you again next week.